There is a moment that happens in every real emergency, and if you have lived through one, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not the moment the power goes out or the storm warning hits the news. It is the moment you walk into a grocery store 2 hours after everyone else had the same idea, and you watch a grown adult fight over the last bag of white rice on an otherwise completely bare shelf. I have been in that store. I have watched that happen. And I have also been the person who turned around, walked back out to my car, drove home, and cooked a full, satisfying, nutritionally complete meal from what I already had sitting quietly in my pantry. That gap between the person panicking in the aisle and the person already home cooking does not come from luck. It does not come from spending a fortune on fancy survival systems. It comes from thinking slightly differently about which foods are actually worth stocking. Not the obvious ones. Not the ones everybody else reaches for at exactly the wrong moment. The ones that sit untouched on shelves during every shortage because most people simply never learn to want them. These are 11 of those foods. I have been adding them to my pantry for years. I rotate them into regular cooking. My family eats them without complaint. And every single time there has been a supply disruption in my area, every one of these items was still available long after the standard emergency shopping list had been stripped bare. I want to start here because this one gets dismissed faster than almost anything else on this list, and that dismissal is a mistake that costs people more than they realize. Most people hear bouillon cubes and think flavoring, a nice extra, something to enhance a dish when times are good. What they miss is what happens to morale after 2 weeks of eating the same plain staples every single day. Monotony during a real emergency is not just uncomfortable. It actively erodes the patience, cooperation, and mental steadiness of everyone around you. By day 10 of eating rice and beans with no variation, something quiet and corrosive starts happening in a household, and most people attribute it to stress when it is partly just the grinding sameness of every meal. A single bouillon cube dissolved into a bowl of plain rice does not just change the flavor. It changes the entire experience of the meal. It transforms something people are forcing themselves to eat into something they are actually willing to look forward to. That psychological function is worth more than almost any other item on this list, gram for gram. Bouillon cubes take up almost no space. They cost almost nothing. They stay fully stocked during shortage events because nobody thinks to panic buy them. Store them properly, out of cardboard, in sealed glass jars with a small silica gel packet, and they will outlast most of the rest of your pantry. There is also a practical health angle. Concentrated sodium and minerals replace electrolytes lost through sweat and physical exertion during stressful periods, which matters more than most people account for. This one sounds like it belongs in a health food store next to supplements with names nobody can pronounce, and that reputation has kept it off most emergency shopping lists entirely. That is its advantage. 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast deliver around 8 grams of complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids your body cannot produce on its own. It keeps for up to 2 years in a basic airtight container stored somewhere cool and dark. No special packaging required. But the reason it genuinely belongs in a serious stockpile is a single nutrient that almost no standard prepper food provides. Vitamin B12. The B12 is not optional for human health. It is directly involved in nervous system function, red blood cell production, and cognitive clarity. In a prolonged emergency where your diet is restricted, repetitive, and consumed under sustained stress, B12 deficiency does not announce itself dramatically. It shows up as a slow dulling, fatigue that feels like stress, mental flatness that feels like depression, a general erosion of sharpness that you might not connect to nutrition until you are already significantly deficient. Nutritional yeast has a savory, faintly nutty flavor that works stirred into rice, mixed into soups, or sprinkled over whatever is on the plate. It does not taste like a supplement. It tastes like food. A 5-pound bag costs around $40 and will remain fully stocked at most grocery stores during any shortage because the panic buying crowd has simply never heard of it. Here is the gap in most emergency food stockpiles that almost nobody talks about. Not protein. Not calories. Fat. Specifically, dietary fat, the macronutrient that most shelf-stable emergency staples are nearly devoid of. White rice has essentially zero fat. Dried beans have almost none. Freeze-dried meals often strip fat out deliberately because fat shortens shelf life. The result is a stockpile that can keep someone alive on calories while quietly failing them on one of the things the human body needs most. A sustained fuel source for everything from hormone production to brain function to staying warm in cold conditions. Full fat can coconut milk solves this problem cheaply and practically. Each can contains roughly 50 grams of healthy fat, stays shelf-stable for up to 5 years, costs around $2, and can be found for even less at Asian grocery stores. Add it to rice and the meal transforms, suddenly creamy, calorie-dense, genuinely filling in a way plain rice simply is not. Stir it into soups and the calorie content rises without increasing volume, which means the same pot feeds more people more effectively. In a high-stress or physically demanding situation, your body's fat requirements increase considerably. Coconut milk is one of the most practical ways to meet that need from a shelf-stable source. Not potato flakes. Not instant mash. Actual potato flour, made from whole dried potatoes, milled into a fine powder, has been a staple of European household kitchens for generations and has gone almost entirely unnoticed by the modern prepping community. The shelf life alone puts it in a different category from almost anything else you can store. In an airtight container, potato flour holds its quality for up to 10 years. Regular all-purpose wheat flour goes stale in 6 to 12 months. That is not a marginal difference, that is a completely different planning horizon. Potato flour is also naturally gluten-free, which matters in a collapse situation where specialty dietary options disappear almost immediately. If anyone in your household has celiac disease or a sensitivity, this stops being a convenient alternative and becomes genuinely essential. Beyond that, it is high in resistant starch, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria and slows digestion, meaning you feel full for longer after eating it. When rationing food, anything that extends the time between meals without leaving people hungry is a real practical advantage. Mixed with water and a pinch of salt and cooked in a dry pan over any heat source, potato flour makes a flatbread in under 5 minutes. Hot bread during an emergency changes how every meal around it feels in ways that are difficult to overstate. A 5-pound bag costs around $8 and sits completely untouched on store shelves during every shortage I have witnessed. I have a jar of ghee on my pantry shelf that has been sitting at room temperature, unopened, for just over 4 years. I used it to cook dinner last week. It tasted exactly as it should, rich, clean, slightly nutty. No rancidity. No off flavor. No problem. This is not remarkable if you understand what ghee actually is. Clarified butter that has been cooked long enough for all water content to evaporate and all milk proteins to be removed, leaving behind essentially pure butter fat. Without moisture or protein present, the biological processes that cause ordinary fats to spoil simply cannot occur. This is chemistry, not marketing. Most other fats in a standard pantry fail at exactly the moment you need them. Butter goes soft and then rancid quickly without refrigeration. Coconut oil, while more stable than many alternatives, can separate and develop off flavors in sustained heat. Vegetable oils oxidize over time. Ghee does none of these things under normal storage conditions. No refrigeration, no mylar bags, no oxygen absorbers required. Keep it in a sealed glass jar out of direct sunlight and it takes care of itself. Your body needs dietary fat as a genuine biological requirement. Most of the core foods in a standard emergency pantry provide almost none of it. Ghee fills that gap without asking much of you in return. A good jar runs $12 to $15 and, in any practical sense, does not expire. There is one nutrient almost completely absent from the standard emergency food list that most preppers have never once thought to account for: iodine. Your thyroid needs iodine to produce the hormones that regulate your metabolism, energy levels, body temperature, and cognitive function. In a prolonged emergency with a restricted diet and sustained physiological stress, iodine deficiency does not stay theoretical for long. 1 sheet of dried nori contains more iodine than most people consume across an entire week of normal eating. Dried seaweed, nori, wakame, dulse, is also shelf-stable for years, takes up almost no space, requires no refrigeration, and stays fully stocked at Asian grocery stores during shortage events when everything else is already gone. Nori has a mild flavor and a protein content that is high relative to its calorie count. Wakame is a meaningful source of magnesium, which plays a direct role in energy production and mood stability. Dulse carries a natural saltiness that can partially replace cooking salt in certain applications. Crumble 1 sheet of nori into rice while it cooks and it dissolves almost completely into the dish, adding a quiet savory depth without tasting particularly like seaweed. A full year's supply for a family of 4 costs around $45 and fits in a single small box. When Aztec warriors prepared for extended military campaigns, chia seeds were part of their field rations, not as a supplement, not as an afterthought, but as a primary food source considered valuable enough to use as currency. The reason is directly relevant to a modern emergency pantry. Chia seeds absorb up to 12 times their own weight in water. When consumed, they form a slow-moving gel in the digestive system that significantly delays stomach emptying. The practical result is that a meal containing chia seeds keeps you full for substantially longer than the same meal without them. Testing this yourself is straightforward and the difference is striking. In an emergency where food is being rationed, extending the time between meals without anyone feeling hungry is not a comfort feature. It is a genuine multiplier on how long your food supply lasts. Chia seeds also contain all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein source. They provide more omega-3 fatty acids per teaspoon than a full serving of salmon, and unlike fish oil supplements that degrade relatively quickly, vacuum-sealed chia seeds hold that nutritional content for up to 5 years. They require no cooking, no preparation beyond soaking in water if preferred, and no fuel to use. In a situation where cooking fuel is limited, that is a meaningful practical advantage. 10 pounds costs around $60 and represents a nutritional profile that no other food on this list can fully replicate. This one will make certain people in the prepping community uncomfortable, and I am not particularly concerned about that reaction. The instant noodle blocks sold at Asian grocery stores, the products that families across Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia eat as genuine everyday meals, belong in a serious emergency stockpile. The argument is not primarily nutritional. It is psychological, and the psychological side of long-term emergency eating is the thing the prepping community most consistently underestimates. Eating identically every single day for weeks quietly corrodes something in a household that has nothing to do with caloric intake. Decision-making gets worse. Patience erodes. People stop engaging with meals and start treating them as obligations. The cumulative effect on a group's ability to function cooperatively under stress is real and significant, and it almost never gets discussed in the context of emergency food planning. Something genuinely different to eat, even something simple, even something that takes 3 minutes to prepare, actively interrupts that erosion. Quality Asian market noodles provide that interruption. The noodles themselves are better than cheap domestic alternatives, often wheat or egg-based, with some varieties offering 8 to 10 grams of protein per serving. The seasoning packets contain actual spice blends, dried vegetables, fermented bases, and regional flavor profiles that produce meaningfully different meals across varieties. A 100-block supply costs under $50, produces complete meals with minimal water and minimal fuel, and remains available at Asian grocery stores during shortage events when conventional supermarket shelves are already bare.